The annual Spring Blossom Festival was the heartbeat of Willow Creek, Virginia, a small riverside town where the air buzzed with life every April. The grassy banks of the James River sparkled under the sun, lined with colorful tints adorned with wildflowers and twinkling lights. Families gathered with their dogs, labs bounding after frisbees, terriers yapping at the breeze, while the scent of blooming dogwoods mingled with the sound of laughter. It was the kind of day that made you feel alive, the kind of day everyone looked forward to all year. Everyone, that is, except Emma. From the window of the Willow Creek Animal Shelter, 12-year-old Emma watched it all unfold, her hands resting still on the arms of her wheelchair. 3 years ago, she'd have been out there too, racing through the fields with her family's old mutt, Scout, her blonde braid bouncing as she laughed. Now, the world beyond the glass felt like a memory she couldn't touch. The accident had taken more than her ability to walk. It had stolen the freedom she'd once felt with every bounding step beside a dog. Her mom, Sarah, sat nearby, offering a warm smile. "Beautiful day out there, huh, sweetie?" she asked, her voice soft with hope. "It is," Emma replied, her blue eyes tracing a golden retriever chasing its tail across the grass. Her voice carried a quiet ache, a longing she couldn't hide. "I just wish I could be out there with him." Sarah squeezed her hand, understanding more than words could say. Since the crash, she'd watched Emma fight to keep her spirits up, but some days, the weight of what she'd lost pressed too hard. Still, there was something in the air that afternoon, a whisper of change, a spark of something extraordinary waiting to unfold. And it started with the sound of a truck rumbling up the shelter's gravel drive, carrying a dog no one else could tame. The shelter door swung open, and 2 volunteers stumbled in, tugging at a leash attached to a golden retriever. She was beautiful, her coat shimmered like sunlight on water, but her eyes were wild, her body tense as she snapped at the air. The volunteers, a wiry man named Tom and a young woman called Lisa, looked frazzled. "This one's a handful," Tom muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "Found her tied up in some backyard off Route 17. Owner said she's too mean to keep." Emma's gaze locked on the dog. Her heart thudded, a mix of curiosity and something deeper, recognition, maybe. The retriever growled low, her ears pinned back, but Emma didn't flinch. She'd seen that look before, in Scout's eyes when he'd been scared by a storm. It wasn't meanness. It was fear. "What's her name?" Emma asked, her voice cutting through the room. Lisa glanced at her, surprised. "Doesn't have one yet. We're calling her the Stray for now. Probably headed for the euthanasia list if she doesn't calm down." Sarah frowned, leaning closer to Emma. "Honey, don't get too attached. She doesn't look safe." But Emma wasn't listening. She wheeled herself forward, stopping a few feet from the dog. The retriever's growls grew louder, her body quivering as she pulled against the leash. Tom tightened his grip. "Easy, kid. She's not friendly." "I can see that," Emma said softly, her eyes never leaving the dog's. "But she's not mean. She's just scared. Let me try something." Sarah's hand shot out, grabbing the arm of Emma's chair. "Emma, no, you can't." "Please, Mom," Emma interrupted, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I know what I'm doing. I can feel it." Sarah hesitated, her face a battleground of worry and trust. Finally, she sighed and let go. Tom and Lisa exchanged skeptical looks, but Emma's calm determination made them pause. "All right," Tom said reluctantly, "but we're staying close. One wrong move, and we're pulling her back." Emma nodded, then turned to the dog. "Hey, girl," she said, her tone low and gentle, like a lullaby. "I'm not gonna hurt you. I just want to sit with you for a bit." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small biscuit, one she'd kept from lunch, just in case. She held it out, her hand steady despite the dog's bared teeth. For a long moment, nothing happened. The shelter was silent except for the retriever's ragged breathing and the distant hum of the festival outside. Then, slowly, the dog's ears twitched forward. Her growl softened, replaced by a wary sniff. Emma didn't move, didn't push, just waited. And then, like a miracle, the retriever took a tentative step toward her, stretching her neck to snatch the biscuit from Emma's hand. The room exhaled. Lisa's jaw dropped. "Well, I'll be damned," she whispered. Emma smiled, a small, triumphant curve of her lips. "See? She just needs someone to listen." She looked at the dog, her eyes bright with something she hadn't felt in years, hope. "I'm gonna call you Sonny," she said. "Because you're gonna shine again. I know you will." Sarah watched from the corner of the shelter's cramped office, her arms crossed tight against her chest. She didn't say a word as Emma wheeled closer to Sonny, the golden retriever now sitting stiffly with the biscuit crumbs dusting her muzzle. The dog's eyes darted between Emma and the volunteers, still wary, but the growling had stopped. For Sarah, that was a small victory and a big worry. "You sure about this, Emma?" she asked, her voice low so the others wouldn't hear. "She's not like Scout. She could hurt you." Emma didn't look up. She kept her focus on Sunny, her fingers brushing the air just shy of the dog's fur. "She won't," she said, certain in a way that surprised even herself. "She's not mad at me. She's mad at what happened to her." Sarah bit her lip, torn between her daughter's stubborn courage and the instinct to pull her back. But Emma had that look, the one she'd worn as a little girl, chasing Scout through the mud, fearless and alive. It had been so long since Sarah had seen it. Tom scratched his head, still holding the leash slack in his hand. "I don't get it," he said, half to Lisa, half to the room. "This dog's been a terror since we picked her up. Snapped at me twice on the ride over. And now she's just sitting there. Maybe she likes kids," Lisa offered, though her tone was skeptical. She glanced at Emma, then at Sunny. "Or maybe she's just tired. Either way, we can't keep her if she's a risk. You know the rules." Emma's head snapped up. "She's not a risk," she said, her voice sharper than she meant it to be. "She just needs time. You can't give up on her already." The words hung heavy in the air, a plea wrapped in defiance. She knew what it felt like to be written off, doctors muttering about limitations, teachers whispering about adjustments. She wouldn't let Sunny face that too. Tom sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, kid, I'm not the bad guy here. But we've got a full house, and a dog like this, she's not adoptable. Not yet, anyway. We'll give her a few days. But if she doesn't shape up," he didn't finish, but he didn't have to. Emma's stomach twisted. She knew what "a few days" meant in a place like this. "Then let me work with her," Emma said, wheeling herself closer still. Sunny flinched at the movement, her ears flicking back, but she didn't growl. "I'll come every day. I'll show you she's worth keeping." Sarah stepped forward, her shadow falling over Emma's chair. "Honey, you've got school, therapy, your plate's full already. And this dog, she's not your responsibility." "But she could be," Emma shot back, her blue eyes blazing. "Mom, I'm not doing anything else that matters." "Not really." This, she gestured to Sunny, who tilted her head slightly, listening. "This feels right." Sarah opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. She saw the fire in Emma's face, the kind that hadn't burned there since before the crash. It scared her, but it also stirred something proud and fragile in her chest. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "But you're not doing this alone. I'll be here. And if she so much as snaps at you." "She won't," Emma promised, though deep down, she wasn't entirely sure. She turned back to Sunny, softening her tone. "Will you, girl?" The next morning, Emma was back at the shelter before the festival crowd swelled. She barely slept, her mind racing with thoughts of Sunny, those haunted eyes, that trembling frame. She'd packed a small bag with treats, a worn tennis ball, and a notebook to track progress, like she used to do with Scout. Sarah drove her over, the car quiet except for the hum of the engine and the distant patter of spring rain on the roof. Sunny was in a kennel at the back, curled into a tight ball, her golden fur matted from the night. When Emma approached, the dog's head lifted, and a low rumble started in her throat. "Hey, it's just me," Emma said, keeping her distance. She tossed a treat through the bars, a piece of chicken this time, something Scout had loved. Sunny sniffed it, hesitated, then snatched it up, her eyes never leaving Emma. "That's it," Emma murmured, a smile tugging at her lips. "You're not so tough, are you?" She settled her chair a few feet from the kennel and started talking, not commands, just stories. About Scout, about the fields behind her old house, about the way the river looked at sunrise. She didn't know if Sunny understood, but the dog's ears perked up, and the growling faded. Day after day, Emma returned. The festival came and went, leaving the town quieter, but Emma's world grew louder with possibility. By the third day, Sunny let her touch her nose through the bars, a brief, shaky contact that sent a thrill through Emma's veins. By the fifth, the dog pressed her head against Emma's hand, her tail giving a single, tentative whack. It wasn't much, but it was everything. "She's softening," Emma told Sarah one evening, her voice bright as they sat at the kitchen table. "She's not scared of me anymore. I think she's starting to trust." Sarah stirred her tea, her brow furrowed. "I see it too, sweetie. But trust takes time, and this dog, she's got a lot of hurt in her. You can't fix that overnight." "I know," Emma said, tracing the rim of her glass. "But I feel like she gets me, Mom. Like she knows I've been hurt too." She paused, then added softly, "Maybe we're fixing each other." Sarah's eyes softened, but before she could reply, the phone rang. It was Lisa from the shelter. "Emma there?" she asked, her voice tight. Sarah handed over the receiver, a knot forming in her stomach. "Hey, Lisa," Emma said, gripping the phone. "What's up?" "It's Sunny," Lisa said, and Emma's heart sank. "We found something in her old crate, a piece of rope and a stick with marks on it. Like someone used it to hit her hard. I thought you should know." Emma's breath caught. She pictured Sunny's scars, the way she flinched at loud noises. "That's why she's so scared," she whispered. "Someone hurt her bad." "Yeah," Lisa said grimly. "And it's why we're still on the fence about her. She's better with you, no question, but the boss isn't convinced. Says she's too unpredictable. You've got a week to prove she's worth saving, Emma. After that, we're out of options." Emma hung up, her hands trembling. She looked at Sarah, who'd heard enough to guess the stakes. "A week?" Sarah asked, her voice rising. "That's not fair. You've already done so much." "It's not about fair," Emma said, her jaw set. "It's about Sunny. I'm not letting her down." She wheeled herself to her room, grabbed her notebook, and started planning. She didn't know how, but she'd show them. Sunny wasn't a lost cause. She was a fighter, just like her. Outside, the sky darkened as spring clouds gathered over Willow Creek. The river swelled with each passing rain, its banks creeping higher. Emma didn't notice yet, but the storm was coming, and it would test her and Sunny in ways neither could imagine. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, the sky over Willow Creek swollen with clouds that promised more than a passing shower. Emma barely noticed as she wheeled herself down the sidewalk toward the shelter, her notebook tucked under one arm and a bag of treats swinging from her chair. Her mind was on Sunny, those flickers of trust she'd seen, the way the dog's tail had wagged, just once, like a secret shared between them. A week wasn't much time, but it was enough. It had to be. Sarah trailed behind, her umbrella tapping the pavement. "Slow down, Emma," she called, her voice tinged with worry. "The ground's slick. You don't want to tip." Emma didn't answer, her focus fixed on the shelter's weathered sign ahead. She could hear the dogs barking already, a chorus of hope and chaos that pulled her forward. Inside, the air smelled of wet fur and bleach. Sunny's kennel was still at the back, and when Emma approached, the retriever lifted her head from her paws. Her eyes were brighter today, less shadowed, though she still shrank back as Tom unlocked the gate. "She's been quieter since you started coming," he said, his tone grudgingly impressed. "Ate her breakfast without a fuss this morning." "That's because she knows I'm here," Emma said, tossing a treat into the kennel. Sunny sniffed it, then edged forward to take it, her movements cautious but deliberate. Emma smiled. "See? She's learning." Tom grunted, crossing his arms. "Maybe. But quiet's not the same as safe. Lisa told you about the deadline, right? Boss is coming by Saturday to make the call. You've got 5 days now." Emma's smile faltered, but she nodded. "I'll be ready." She wheeled closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. "We'll be ready, won't we, Sunny?" Over the next few days, Emma turned the shelter's small yard into their training ground. She started simple, holding out treats, coaxing Sunny to sit, to stay. The dog hesitated at first, her body tense as if waiting for a blow, but Emma's patience was a steady current, wearing down the fear. By Wednesday, Sunny followed her across the yard, her steps tentative but sure, her tail wagging more freely. Emma taught her to fetch the tennis ball, laughing as Sunny bounded after it, her golden coat catching the dim light filtering through the clouds. "She's smart," Emma told Sarah that night, scribbling notes at the kitchen table. "She just needed someone to believe in her." "Look," she held up the notebook, pages filled with check marks and doodles of Sunny's wagging tail. She sat for 10 seconds today without moving. Sarah peered over her shoulder, a faint smile breaking through her worry. "You're doing something special, Emma. I haven't seen you this happy since, well, you know." She paused, then added, "But I still don't like how fast this is going. What if she panics? What if you?" "She won't," Emma cut in, her voice firm. "She trusts me, Mom, and I trust her." Sarah didn't argue, but her eyes drifted to the window, where rain streaked the glass in relentless sheets. The river was rising, she'd heard it on the radio that morning. Flood warnings were creeping closer to Willow Creek, and the shelter sat just a block from the banks. She didn't say it aloud, but the thought gnawed at her. What if this all went wrong? By Friday, the town was abuzz with more than Emma's progress. The river had swollen past its usual edges, lapping at the sandbags piled along Main Street. At the shelter, the dogs sensed it too, their barks grew sharper, more urgent. Emma arrived early, her raincoat dripping as she wheeled through the door. Sunny greeted her with a soft whine, pressing her nose against the kennel bars. "Hey, girl," Emma said, reaching out. Sunny licked her fingers, a small gesture that made Emma's chest ache with pride. "You're doing so good." She turned to Lisa, who was stacking crates near the entrance. "She's ready to show the boss tomorrow. She can sit, stay, even come when I call her." Lisa nodded, but her face was tight. "That's great, Emma, but we've got bigger problems. River's up 3 feet since yesterday. If it keeps raining, we might have to move the dogs out. Tom's already talking about cutting losses, starting with the tough cases." She glanced at Sunny, her meaning clear. Emma's heart thudded. "You can't mean that. She's not a loss, she's better now. You've seen it." "I have," Lisa said, softening. "But it's not my call. Tom spooked about the flood, and the boss, he's old school. Doesn't like risks. You've got to make tomorrow count." Emma clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. She wouldn't let Sunny go, not after everything. She spent the rest of the day with the dog, running drills in the yard despite the drizzle. Sunny followed her every move, her eyes locked on Emma like a lifeline. By dusk, they were soaked but triumphant. Sunny had fetched the ball 5 times without hesitation, dropping it at Emma's feet with a proud little huff. As they headed inside, Emma noticed a battered crate in the corner, half hidden under a tarp. It was Sunny's old one, the one Lisa had mentioned. Curiosity tugged at her, and she wheeled over, lifting the tarp with trembling hands. Inside was a tangle of rope and a short, thick stick, its end splintered, stained with dark streaks that made her stomach lurch. She picked it up, her fingers brushing the rough wood, and Sunny whimpered, shrinking back. "Emma, what are you?" Sarah's voice cut off as she saw the stick. She knelt beside her daughter, her face paling. "Oh, honey, that's awful." "They hit her with this," Emma said, her voice breaking. "That's why she's so scared. They didn't just tie her up, they hurt her." She dropped the stick, her hands shaking as she reached for Sunny. The dog hesitated, then pressed her head against Emma's lap, a soft tremor running through her. "I'm so sorry, girl," Emma whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "No one's ever gonna hurt you again. I promise." Sarah wrapped an arm around Emma's shoulders, her own eyes glistening. "You're right about her, Emma. She's been through hell. But you're giving her something better." Emma nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve. "She's giving me something too." She looked at Sunny, the dog's warm weight grounding her. "We're in this together." That night, the rain turned torrential, hammering the roof of their small house. Sarah stayed up, listening to the radio crackle with updates. James River at critical levels. Residents near Willow Creek urged to prepare. Emma slept fitfully, dreaming of Sunny's golden fur against a rising tide. She didn't know it yet, but the real test was hours away, a storm that would demand everything she and Sunny had built, and more. Saturday morning broke with a roar. The river had breached its banks, flooding the low streets of Willow Creek. Sarah woke Emma with a shake, her face pale. "Get up, sweetie. The shelter's in trouble, the water's coming fast." Emma bolted upright, her heart racing. "Sunny," she gasped, already reaching for her chair. "We have to get to her." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but we're doing this together." They arrived at the shelter in chaos. Volunteers scrambled to load crates into trucks, their shouts drowned by the roar of the river. Water lapped at the building's foundation, muddy and relentless. Emma wheeled through the door, her eyes scanning for Sunny. The retriever was pacing her kennel, her whines piercing the din. "Emma," Lisa called, wading through ankle-deep water. "We're moving the dogs out, Tom's got a van ready. But Sunny's freaking out, she won't let anyone near her." "I'll get her," Emma said, pushing forward. Sarah grabbed her arm, but Emma shook her off. "Mom, I have to. She needs me." Sarah's grip tightened, then released. "Be careful," she whispered, her voice lost to the storm. Emma reached the kennel, her wheels splashing through the flood water. Sunny lunged at the bars, her eyes wild with panic. "Hey, girl, it's me," Emma said, her voice steady despite the chaos. She held out a treat, her hand trembling. "We're getting out of here. Together." Sunny froze, her ears twitching. Then, slowly, she pressed her nose to Emma's hand, a lifeline in the rising tide. The water was cold, seeping through Emma's jeans as she gripped the arms of her wheelchair. It swirled around her wheels, tugging at them like a living thing, hungry and relentless. The shelter's back room was a mess of overturned crates and frantic barking, the other dogs already loaded into vans or scrambling with volunteers. But Sunny was still here, her golden fur slick with rain, her eyes locked on Emma as if she were the only anchor in the flood. "Hold on, girl," Emma said, her voice cutting through the roar of the storm. She reached for the kennel latch, her fingers fumbling in the wet. Sunny pawed at the bars, her whines rising into sharp, desperate yips. The latch clicked open, and the dog surged forward, pressing her trembling body against 𝐬𝐴's legs. For a moment, they just stayed there, 𝐬𝐴's hand buried in Sunny's fur, Sunny's warmth steadying her pounding heart. 𝐬𝐴, we've got to go. Sarah's shout came from the doorway, her silhouette blurred by the rain. She waded toward them, her boots sloshing through the rising water. The vans are leaving. Tom says it's now or never. I'm not leaving her, 𝐬𝐴 snapped, her tone fierce. She looped a leash around Sunny's collar, her hands steady despite the chaos. She's coming with us. Sarah didn't argue. She couldn't, not with the fire in 𝐬𝐴's eyes. She grabbed the back of 𝐬𝐴's chair, pushing against the current as they headed for the exit. The water was up to 𝐬𝐴's knees now, lapping at Sunny's belly, and the dog whimpered, her ears flat. It's okay, 𝐬𝐴 murmured, stroking her head. I've got you. Outside, the world was a blur of gray and brown. The river had swallowed half the street, its muddy waves crashing against sandbags that crumbled under the strain. Volunteers shouted over the wind, herding dogs into a battered white van parked on higher ground. Tom waved them over, his face grim. Hurry up. We're out of time. 𝐬𝐴's wheels caught on a chunk of debris, a broken crate, half submerged, and the chair lurched. Sarah stumbled, losing her grip, and 𝐬𝐴 felt the water pull harder, threatening to tip her. Sunny barked, sharp and urgent, nudging 𝐬𝐴's leg with her nose. I'm okay, 𝐬𝐴 gasped, righting herself. Keep going, Mom. They reached the van just as Tom slammed the side door shut. No room, he yelled over the storm. We're full. Dogs are stacked to the roof. You'll have to wait for the next one. There won't be a next one, Sarah shot back, her voice cracking. The road's flooding. It's now, or we're stuck. 𝐬𝐴's chest tightened. She looked at Sunny, the dog's wet fur plastered to her trembling frame, then at the van's packed interior. We'll figure it out, she said, her mind racing. Put Sunny in. I'll hold her on my lap. Tom hesitated, then nodded. Fine, but you're on your own getting in. He yanked the door open again, and Sarah lifted Sunny into the van, shoving crates aside. 𝐬𝐴 wheeled closer, her arms straining as she hoisted herself onto the edge of the seat. Sunny scrambled onto her lap, a heavy, soggy weight, and Sarah climbed in behind, slamming the door shut. The van roared to life, tires spinning in the mud before catching traction. 𝐬𝐴 clung to Sunny, her fingers tangled in the dog's fur as they jolted toward higher ground. The shelter shrank in the rearview mirror, its roof barely visible above the rising tide. For a moment, 𝐬𝐴 thought they'd made it, until a scream pierced the air. Help! Somebody, over here! The voice was faint, almost lost to the wind, but it came from the direction of the old storage shed across the street. 𝐬𝐴 craned her neck, squinting through the rain. A small figure stood on the shed's slanted roof, a boy, no older than 6, clutching a soaked teddy bear. Water swirled around the shed's base, climbing fast. Stop the van! 𝐬𝐴 shouted, her voice raw. Tom glanced back, his eyes wide. What? We can't. There's a kid out there. 𝐬𝐴 pointed, her hand shaking. He's trapped. We have to help him. Sarah grabbed her arm. 𝐬𝐴, no. It's too dangerous. The water's too deep. Let the firefighters handle it. They won't get here in time, 𝐬𝐴 said, her gaze locked on the boy. She felt Sunny shift in her lap, the dog's ears perking up as if she sensed the urgency. Sunny can do it. She's strong, she can swim. 𝐬𝐴, you're not, Sarah started, but 𝐬𝐴 cut her off. I'm not leaving him, she said, her voice steel. She turned to Sunny, cupping the dog's face in her hands. You with me, girl? Sunny's eyes met hers, steady and bright despite the storm. She barked once, sharp and clear. Tom swore under his breath, then jerked the wheel, pulling the van as close to the shed as the flood would allow. You've got 5 minutes, he growled. After that, we're gone. 𝐬𝐴 nodded, her heart hammering. Sarah helped her back into the chair, her hands trembling as she lowered it into the shallowest edge of the water, still up to 𝐬𝐴's thighs. Sunny leapt down beside her, shaking off the rain. Go, girl, 𝐬𝐴 said, pointing toward the shed. Find him. Sunny didn't hesitate. She plunged into the flood, her legs churning against the current. 𝐬𝐴 followed, pushing her chair through the muck, every turn of the wheels a battle. Sarah stayed at her side, her breath hitching with every step. 𝐬𝐴, please, be careful, she pleaded, but 𝐬𝐴 barely heard her. Her eyes were on Sunny, the dog's golden head bobbing above the water as she swam toward the shed. The boy spotted them, his small face pale with fear. Help, he cried again, his voice breaking. Sunny reached the shed first, scrambling onto a pile of debris that jutted from the water, a broken fence, half submerged. She barked, loud and insistent, guiding Emma closer. "I'm coming," Emma called, her arms burning as she forced her chair through the flood. The water surged, a sudden wave knocking her sideways. She gasped, clutching the arms, but the chair tipped, spilling her into the icy current. "Emma!" Sarah screamed, lunging forward. Before Emma could sink, Sunny was there. The dog's teeth clamped onto her jacket, tugging with a strength Emma hadn't known she had. Sunny pulled, her paws scrabbling against the mud, dragging Emma back to the debris pile. Emma coughed, clinging to the fence as Sunny pressed against her, warm and solid. "I'm okay," Emma rasped, her voice hoarse. She looked up at the boy, now just a few feet above. "Hold on, we're getting you down." Sunny barked again, circling the shed, then leapt onto a floating plank, testing its weight. Though it held, barely, and Emma pointed. "Up there. Sunny, go." Sunny obeyed, climbing the makeshift ramp with careful steps. She reached the boy, nudging him gently with her nose. He hesitated, then wrapped his arms around her neck, sobbing into her fur. "Good girl," Emma whispered, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "Bring him to me." Sunny turned, guiding the boy down the plank step by shaky step. The water rose higher, lapping at Emma's chest, but she held fast, her hands outstretched. When Sunny leapt back into the flood, the boy clinging to her back, Emma grabbed his arm, pulling him onto the debris beside her. "I've got you," she said, her voice trembling with relief. "You're safe." Sarah waded in, lifting the boy into her arms as Sunny swam back to Emma's side. The dog pressed against her, panting hard, her eyes shining with something fierce and loyal. Emma wrapped an arm around her, her breath ragged. "You did it, girl," she said, burying her face in Sunny's wet fur. "You saved him." The van's horn blared, a sharp call through the storm. Sarah carried the boy to safety, shouting for Tom to wait. Emma pushed herself back into her chair with Sarah's help, Sunny staying close as they slogged through the flood. By the time they reached the van, the boy's mother was there, a frantic woman who'd been searching the festival grounds. She scooped him up, sobbing thanks through the rain. Emma collapsed into the van's seat, Sunny curling up at her feet. Her body ached, her clothes clung to her like ice, but she felt alive, more alive than she had in years. She looked at Sunny, the dog's head resting on her knee, and smiled. "We're a team, aren't we?" she whispered. Sunny's tail thumped once, a quiet yes in the storm's fading roar. The rain slowed to a drizzle as the van rumbled up the hill, away from the flooded heart of Willow Creek. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of wet fur and relief. The boy, his name was Ethan, Emma learned from his mother's tearful chatter, clung to his mom in the front seat, his teddy bear still dripping. Volunteers murmured in hushed tones, their eyes darting between Emma and Sunny, who lay sprawled across her lap, exhausted but calm. Sarah sat beside her, one hand resting on Emma's shoulder, the other clutching a soggy blanket she'd pulled from a crate. "You scared me half to death," Sarah said, her voice shaky but warm. She brushed a strand of wet hair from Emma's face, her fingers lingering. "But I've never been prouder, sweetie. What you did out there, it was incredible." Emma managed a tired smile, her body heavy with fatigue. "I couldn't have done it without Sunny," she said, scratching the dog's ears. Sunny lifted her head, her golden eyes soft and steady, and let out a quiet huff, like she understood every word. "She's the real hero." Tom glanced back from the driver's seat, his gruff exterior cracking. "Gotta admit, kid, I didn't think that Mutt had it in her. Or you, for that matter. Guess I was wrong about both of you." Emma's chest swelled, a mix of pride and defiance. "She's not a mutt," she said firmly. "She's Sunny. And she's mine now, right?" Sarah squeezed her shoulder, a silent yes. Tom just chuckled, shaking his head. "Yeah, I'd say you've earned her." Shelter's not going to argue after this. By the time they reached the town hall, high ground turned makeshift refuge, the news had spread. People crowded the steps, their faces a blur of worry and awe as the van pulled up. Ethan's mother climbed out first, cradling her son, and the murmurs turned to cheers when she shouted, "This girl and her dog saved my boy." Eyes turned to Emma, and she felt her cheeks flush as Sarah helped her down, Sunny leaping after her with a protective nudge. Lisa pushed through the crowd, her raincoat plastered to her frame. "Emma, you're insane," she said, but her grin betrayed her admiration. "And brilliant. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." "It wasn't just me," Emma said, patting Sunny's head. "She knew what to do. She trusted me." Lisa crouched to Sunny's level, offering a hesitant hand. The dog sniffed it, then licked her fingers, a far cry from the snarling stray they'd dragged in a week ago. "Guess she's not such a lost cause after all," Lisa said, standing. Boss is here. He saw the whole thing from the window. Wants to talk to you. Emma's stomach flipped. The boss, Mr. Hargrove, was a stern man with a reputation for cutting corners and quick decisions. He'd been the one pushing to euthanize Sonny, deadline or not. She wheeled toward the hall, Sonny trotting at her side, Sarah close behind. The crowd parted, their whispers buzzing like static. Mr. Hargrove stood in the doorway, his gray hair damp, his arms crossed. His eyes flicked from Emma to Sonny, then back again. Heard you pulled off a miracle out there, he said, his voice gruff but lacking its usual edge. Boy's safe because of you too. Emma straightened in her chair, meeting his gaze. Sonny did most of it, she said. She's not dangerous, she's smart and brave. She just needed a chance. Hargrove studied her, then Sonny, who sat tall beside her, tail thumping softly. After a long pause, he sighed. I've been running this shelter 20 years, and I don't think I've ever seen a kid or a dog prove me wrong like this. She's yours, Emma. And if you've got any ideas about what we should do with her kind, I'm listening. Emma blinked, caught off guard. You mean? I can keep her. More than that, Hargrove said, a rare smile tugging at his lips. You've got a knack for this. We could use someone like you training dogs, helping folks see what they're capable of. Think about it. The words sank in slowly, a spark igniting in Emma's chest. She nodded, too stunned to speak, and Sarah stepped forward, her voice thick with emotion. She will. We'll figure it out together. The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of sound that washed over Emma like the flood itself. She looked at Sonny, the dog's head tilted up to meet her gaze, and felt tears prick her eyes, not from fear this time, but from something bigger. Purpose. Partnership. A future she hadn't dared to dream of before. Days turned to weeks, and Willow Creek began to heal. The river receded, leaving mud and memories in its wake, but the story of Emma and Sonny lingered. Local papers ran headlines, girl in wheelchair and rescue dog save child from flood, and soon, letters poured in from across Virginia, then beyond. People wanted to know more, about Emma, about Sonny, about how a girl and a dog could turn fear into triumph. Emma didn't let it go to her head. She and Sonny moved into a quiet routine, mornings at the shelter, where Emma started working with other tough cases, dogs with scars and stories like Sonny's. She taught them to trust again, her voice steady and kind, her wheelchair a bridge between their worlds. Sonny stayed by her side, a golden shadow who'd bark encouragement or nudge a shy pup forward when Emma needed help. One afternoon, Mr. Hargrove called her into his office. Got a proposal, he said, sliding a stack of papers across his desk. Folks from the community college up in Richmond heard about you. They're starting a program, animal therapy, for kids with disabilities. They want you and Sonny to be part of it. Training, outreach, the works. Emma's breath caught. Me? But I'm not even out of school yet. You're more than that, Hargrove said, tapping the papers. You've got something they can't teach in a classroom. Say yes, and we'll make it work. School, training, all of it. Emma looked at Sonny, sprawled on the floor chewing a toy she'd earned from a successful session. The dog glanced up, her tail wagging like she already knew the answer. Okay, Emma said, a grin spreading across her face. We're in. Months later, on a crisp fall day, Emma wheeled herself along the riverbank, Sonny trotting beside her. The water was calm now, a mirror reflecting the gold and red of the trees. The festival tints were long gone, but the memory of that stormy spring clung to the town like a badge of honor. Emma stopped at a bench, her hands resting in her lap, and Sonny flopped down with a contented sigh. We did it, girl, Emma said, her voice soft. Not just the flood, but everything. She thought of the kids she'd met at the shelter, some in chairs like hers, some with scars you couldn't see, who lit up when Sonny licked their hands. She thought of the dogs she'd helped, their tails wagging as they found new homes. And she thought of herself, the girl who'd once watched life from a window, now living it with every breath. Sonny nudged her hand, her nose warm against Emma's skin. Emma laughed, scratching her behind the ears. You're right, she said. It's not over. It's just the start. The sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the river, and Emma felt it, the freedom she'd lost, found again in the steady heartbeat of the dog beside her. Together, they'd face the storm. Together, they'd build something new.